So I just got around to watching Top Gun for the very first time, and you know what? These call signs are pretty dope. I mean, you got Maverick, Goose, and even Iceman, but I wonder what my call sign would be. Luckily, the Navy sent me it right here in this envelope. Let's open it up. I'm gonna put my sunglasses on to make it look a lot cooler. I bet it's so dope. Alrighty, what's a asteroid? My call sign is asteroid. Throw it all away. Let's just get started with the review. That's crazy. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and today we're diving into all of my spoiler-free thoughts on Top Gun Maverick. A huge thank you to Paramount for giving me the chance to watch this early in IMAX for review. It releases in theaters May 27th, so when you see it, let me know down below in the comments what you thought of this one. Did you like it better than the original, about the same, or even less? I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Now, it's directed by Joseph Kosinski, who I actually really like as a director, and I can't wait for more people to hopefully know who he is after this film. And it stars Tom Cruise, Miles Teller, Val Kilmer, Jennifer Connelly, and even Jay Ellis, someone who I loved from Insecure. Now, before we get into my review, guys, and we talk a little bit about the film and my positives and negatives, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies just like this. So if you do too, and if you like awesome Ray-Bans like mine, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and hit the thumbs up button again if you are a fan of Top Gun or just Tom Cruise action movies in general. I mean, how is this guy still doing it at almost 60 years old? Alrighty, y'all. Well, you know what? Let's waste no more time. Let's get into my review of Top Gun Maverick. So if you don't know much about the story, let's get into it just a little bit. Pete Maverick Mitchell is back where he belongs, pushing the envelope as a courageous test pilot and dodging the advancement in rank that would ground him. Now, Maverick eventually finds himself training a detachment of Top Gun graduates when he encounters Lieutenant Bradley Bradshaw, aka Rooster, the son of Maverick's late friend and RIO, Goose. Y'all remember Goose? It's sad. I don't want to bring it up, alright? It was actually pretty emotional in the original film, but this movie just does a much better job in that department and many others. So let's get right into my positives and start with, the fact that this is better than the original in every way possible. I'm not the biggest fan of the first movie. It really did have a lot of issues for me, but here in Top Gun Maverick, I mean, everything just works. The stakes are much more real, which adds to the drama and the tension for this sequel, and they're introduced much earlier too in this story, like within the first 30 minutes, so it does kind of help set expectations. I had a lot of second act issues in the original film, but they're not found here, and that's mainly due to the chemistry and writing being much better for our core group. And that third act in the original was pretty good, that flying sequence, but I do think that this third act in Maverick, you think it's done and it just keeps going, but in a good way. I thought it was just incredible. And then there's the love story here. See, in the first film, I thought it was uninteresting and there really wasn't a spark between Tom Cruise and Kelly McGillis. But here in Top Gun Maverick, Tom Cruise and Jennifer Connelly's character, Penny, are just really good. They're solid. There are actual sparks that I could feel come off the screen. I mean, both of them had a really good chemistry about them, and I believed their romance. So I did like this duo and many more duos that we'll talk about as we get further into this review. So let's move on to the next point now. And the reason why I think Top Gun Maverick works is not just because it's better than the original, guys. It stands alone as a darn good action movie. And that's due in large part to the technical elements here, starting with the direction by Joseph Kosinski. I loved what he did with Oblivion and Tron Legacy, along with the CGI commercials he directed for Halo 3, the Starry Night commercial, and even the Mad World commercial for Gears of War. But with Maverick, he just adds to his growing legacy. I mean, this guy just understands how to bring a proper level of emotion and a human element to a larger-than-life action or sci-fi movie. So here in this case, of course, it is strictly action, but I found myself getting a little emotional in scenes that I never thought I would kind of feel for, you know, characters that I thought, okay, whatever. The original, they didn't really do the best job at layering emotion, but here, yeah, Joseph Kosinski really works his butt off to get the audience to feel for these characters. And yes, I am a sucker for the callbacks in this movie because Joseph Kosinski pays homage to the original with plenty of moments that I think fans will feast on. You got the classic intro music with the Top Gun text on the screen, and then you have Danger Zone playing. I mean, heck, you even have Tom Cruise on that old motorcycle from the very first film. So, man, he knows how to do it in a way that isn't just hitting you over the head, but instead is fitting within the narrative properly. And when it comes to the cinematography, it's simply breathtaking. And yes, seeing it in IMAX really did help me get a deeper appreciation for the scale of this film. I mean, how in the world did they pull this off? Yes, I know the movie was delayed a couple of times to try and get these stunts in order and refined, but my goodness, I think the delays paid off because this movie is much more better for it. Claudio Miranda is the cinematographer here, and he has worked with Joseph Kosinski before, but he pulls off some incredible shots, and the framing for all of our flying scenes is out of this world. No pun intended, but seriously, there are some jaw-dropping scenes here that I just could not believe I was witnessing, and even the shots on the ground looked really good too. And as a fan of scores and compositions when it comes to the music in films, I loved everything that Lorne Balfe, Harold Faltermeyer, and Hans Zimmer did here. There's a little bit of all three infused into this score, Hans Zimmer's actually being one of the more prominent bits of music here. I don't know, I could just pick it out, but I did love what Lorne Balfe and Harold Faltermeyer brought to the table. It just adds to this overall booming sound design that is found within the film. I mean, gosh, I was feeling the rumble in my chest. And hey, even Lady Gaga's song Hold My Hand captured the essence of the 80s while still infusing a modern touch. I mean, she absolutely crushed it. I'm also a Lady Gaga fan, so okay, maybe a little biased, but man, I just love the way they use that song in the film, and I won't tell you when it comes, but you'll know when it does. Now let's move on to the acting here, which I didn't particularly love in the original, but here, it's miles better. Let's start with Tom Cruise as Maverick. I am telling you guys, this is probably one of the last bona fide movie stars in Hollywood. The way that this man has a screen presence, the charisma he brings, and also outside of the larger than life personality he has in this movie, I loved when his character got grounded and when he was actually able to display lots of emotion, in particular with scenes alongside Miles Teller and Val Kilmer. All of them, honestly, are able to work with Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise is able to work with them near perfectly. And I also don't get how he's still doing all of these stunts at nearly 60 years old, but guys, he's pulling it off pretty well. I did love how Tom Cruise, though, he made some room for our new generation of pilots, and our core group is really, really fun. You have Miles Teller as Rooster, Monica Barbero as Phoenix, Louis Pullman as Bob, Jay Ellis as Payback, even Glenn Powell as Hangman, and Danny Ramirez as Fanboy. I'm sure there are some names I'm missing, but those are just some of the actors that stood out to me. I just loved the swagger that they carried on screen. And yes, there are some very clear similarities between how they introduced the Top Gun graduates or pilots from the first film in this sequel. But man, it is just so effective, and each of them had their own moments, especially Jay Ellis, who I thought was the glue here, and then you have Glenn Powell as Hangman, who is very cocky, but everyone just kind of balances one another out. And yes, Miles Teller is given the spotlight for the most part and has his one-on-one scenes with Tom Cruise a couple of times, but I loved his acting here. He was just someone who was bogged down by his past, but gosh, Miles Teller just brings it. However, for as many new faces, there were some old but familiar faces here as well. And yes, I'm talking about Val Kilmer as Iceman. The movie handles Val Kilmer's medical condition in real life very well here, I'd say, with Maverick texting Iceman for most of the film since Val Kilmer has trouble speaking. But there is a special moment between them, and I'm not going to spoil what happens, but yeah, it had some people in our theater sniffling. And before we move on to our next point, I kind of want to shout out someone in our supporting cast that really won me over, Bashir Salahuddin as Coleman. Even though our supporting cast does have some cool names like John Hamm, he does a pretty solid job. I will tell you that Coleman is a character here that I loved. He was one of my favorites because of his rapport with Maverick and the way that both these actors are able to work together. It's just so fun. And speaking of fun, guys, there was a lot of genuine laughs that I had in this film that I didn't have in the original at all. I did feel like the 1986 Top Gun tried to be funny, but it just wasn't working for me. But here, I'll be honest, the writing was solid enough to where they balanced the action and the emotion okay, and they also balanced the humor well. So yeah, there were moments of levity that I felt were pretty genuine, so shout out to all the writers, including Christopher McQuarrie, who we already know is pretty much a action legend. Alrighty y'all, so now let's get into the negatives, because for as much as I enjoy this movie, there were a couple of areas where I felt the film was lacking. And that begins with the team building. Now, there is this element to the film that even though I like our core group and these new generation of pilots, I felt that maybe there were some scenes either cut or they rushed through some of these moments. Early on in the first act, Jon Hamm's character tells Maverick that he has to assemble a team to eliminate a potential global threat. But the process for actually picking these members of his team and vetting every pilot was a bit one-sided. All the names you heard early on in the movie hardly get screen time outside of the core group that I mentioned earlier in this review. I mean, you have some actors here who I actually really like. You have Raymond Lee, Manny Jacinto, and they get, I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 seconds of screen time and no lines of dialogue. So I'm trying to imagine in my head, were there any scenes cut out here? And honestly, throughout the entire film, it did linger on my mind, and I didn't think it really built any anticipation for who might make the team when they actually selected who was going to go on this mission. And the second thing I thought didn't work too well might work for general audiences, but I am just not a fan of cheesy dialogue, and there's a level of cheese in this script that is like, not working too well for me. Some lines are really being hammered home at the audience, like, "Don't give me that look. That's the only one I got." I swear, guys, I went to bed thinking about that line because they said it so many times along with some other lines of dialogue, but it was just kind of heavy-handed, especially in moments towards the beginning of the film where you hear characters say whenever they see Maverick fly in the air, "That's the fastest man alive." And I'm like, all right, we get it. But was that enough for me to not like this film? Absolutely not, because overall, you guys, Top Gun Maverick is infinitely better than its predecessor. And it is very rare that a sequel is better than the original, but that's the case here for this movie. Joseph Kosinski knocks it out of the park, Tom Cruise is incredible as the leading man, and then you have all of these other actors among this ensemble cast that just gel together very well. I was emotional, engaged during the combat scenes, and our audience was clapping several times, and I almost did too. Hearing the roar of these fighter jets about to take off, and then of course seeing these insane stunts in the air, it just all added for one of the most breathtaking experiences of the year. So Top Gun Maverick for me is a must-see movie this summer on the biggest screen possible if you can safely get out there, and I would give it a strong B+, you know, like that 4 out of 5, you know, you're sitting at 85%, it's a passing grade. Guys, I really enjoyed my time with this movie, and I actually can't wait to watch it again with, you know, some friends, family. Like, I want to actually take people to this, even my girlfriend, who I don't know if she likes the original or not, but she might like this one too. So guys, there you have it. That's my real review of Top Gun Maverick, a film that, again, I think is a must-see this summer. So when you go ahead and watch it in theaters, let me know down below in the comments what you think of this, and tell me, do you like it better than the original or not? And if you haven't already, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and tap on that bell for more reviews just like this, guys, because it's summertime, and that means we got a lot of movies coming up, so I can't wait to discuss all of it with each and every one of you. Alrighty, y'all. Well, again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. Danger Zone! Wait, that's Archer? Oh.